guest speaker today, I would like you to get to know retired Lieutenant Colonel Bill Shawn. You probably notice Bill is originally from Knoxville, Tennessee. I think he's got a little bit of that southern drawl.
Go Big Arm!
Bill spent two tours in Vietnam as a helicopter pilot, 2 Purple Hearts, and if I'm not mistaken, within about 2 months of each other, in the same chopper. They recycle those things. He will share some of his stories with you, but please know going in that his chopper was sometimes known as hard luck. So give you a little preview. And in one of Bill's slides I read that he said a prayer every day that he was in Vietnam, and it hits home. So without further ado, Bill, if you would join us.
I'm sorry. I should have known to put it up in my mouth, not my ear, but anyway. I'm amazed at the size of this group. I went on an honor flight in 2019, and I've made most of the luncheons since then. And I'm disappointed today because I didn't get a hug from Susan, because she meets everybody when we come into those dinners, whether it's a husband, a wife, or whatever. And we appreciate that, Susan. And the second thing that I got a shock when I got here, I've been coming to the luncheons now for about 4 years. And how many people were at I gave this same presentation 2 years ago. If you were present at that, hold your hand up just so I can, well, not very many, I'm surprised. But anyway, I wanted to say one thing if I have permission. You notice I came in on this monstrosity over here. I've fallen 3 times in the last couple months, and I was in the emergency room last week because of it, and I've never broken a bone. But I've seen guys struggle with these little walkers that you walk like this with. If you have this one, you can't fall. You just hold on to the handles and your arms are supporting your body. And I feel like I have to say this to this group because I know there's some older people than me here. I'm 85. And if I need one of those, maybe somebody here even younger than me needs one. It was only $206, and my wife got it for me in 3 days from Amazon. And before I showed up today, I had a 10 o'clock appointment with my neurologist, but he didn't get to see me until 11:20. I didn't think I was going to make this meeting. But anyway, what he told me, and I wanted to share this with y'all because it might save somebody's life or a broken bone. My neurologist said, Bill, and I've been seeing him for years now, he said, Bill, you've got to admit you're getting older. That's your problem. You're stubborn and you don't want to admit you're getting older. But I guarantee you that might save somebody's life from a head hitting concrete or a leg broken. And if anybody wants to know anything about it, just see me when we get through here, okay? Thank you so much for letting me say that. Okay, who's that guy on the right? He's famous. He might be here tonight, but who is that? That's me. That's me after my 1968 year in Vietnam. I think I passed colors pretty good, didn't I? And the left picture is a Cobra helicopter. A Cobra is the world's first true attack helicopter in the world. And I flew that my second tour in Nam a lot. But anyway, that's what it is, and I'll mention more about that a little later. But now if I can see in the darkness, if I can see where to push this thing. Okay. Okay, you're seeing a golf cart there. My wife and I came to the Villages in 2015. And of course everybody gets a golf cart right off, right? So we ended up with a 4 forward like that. Well, I was born and raised a mile from the Tennessee football stadium. My dad, who was raised in Knoxville, Tennessee, was going to have be able to go to Georgia Tech on a scholarship as a football player. But his dad was killed while he was in high school, and he had to raise the family because he was the oldest of 4 kids. So he never made it to college, but he worked with the L&N Railroad for 50 years, never was in the service because the railroad was just as important as the military at that time. But anyway, so that's you see the little dog on the back? That's called Smokey. He's our mascot. And if you pushed his button on his hand, it played Rocky Top. I know there's got to be some Georgia and Alabama and other people here that don't like Tennessee as well as I do, but anyway. Well, after a short time, I realized that that was not really what I needed to do with my golf cart. So I started, this is my drawing of what was going to end up my golf cart. And if it hadn't been for what you're getting ready to see in a minute, you wouldn't even know who I am as a person. I've been in 3 Villages magazines, 2 international magazines, the newspaper twice, villagenews.com twice, and it was all because of the helicopter I built. If I had not done that, nobody would know who Bill Shawn was. But this was what I drew as my idea of what to do to make a helicopter. And this is it. I built that helicopter in my garage in Pine Ridge Village when I was 78 and 79 in a year and a half and about 1,400 hours. When Lynn and I had gotten here to the village, I saw a golf cart that had a board for a tail boom and it had a board for a vertical fin, and from 50 feet away you couldn't tell what it was. I think that stuck in my mind because I thought, that is a sorry example of a helicopter. But the other thing is, there were over 5,000 pilots, crew chiefs, and gunners that didn't make it home from Vietnam. So when I started building this helicopter in my garage, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to dedicate it to those guys that didn't make it back. And there's so many things on it, I can't use, well, let me see if I can get my pointer working here. It might work, it might not. Yeah, there it is. Okay, you see that piece right there? That's the main rotor. Every helicopter has a main rotor. It may have 2 blades, 4 blades, 5 blades, but that's the main rotor. And that's the tail rotor back there. Can y'all see that back in the back? Okay. Right here, that's a 2.75 rocket pod, and there's another one over here. That's just like was on that Cobra you saw a moment ago. And then I have a turret here that had a machine gun and a grenade launcher on it. And that's my AK-47 personal weapon. Would you believe that some lady gave me hell? I was in parades with this thing. Some of y'all may have seen this in parades. I was in parades with this helicopter. And little kids would run up to me and high-five me, and other people would be giving me thumbs up or saluting me or whatever. And this lady said, I can't believe, this is written now, I can't believe that helicopter had a gun on it. Well, I tell you what, there was about 100 people took my back and gave that woman hell. I mean, that's stupid, isn't it? It's made of plastic, it's not a gun. But anyway, oh, I went the wrong way. Oh gosh, I gotta go back, I'm sorry. Well, that's not the right one either. Oh, there I am. Okay, some of the other things on here, that little thing right there is called a pitot tube. And the air goes in that and tells the pilot how fast he's going. And I've got a light here, a light there, a light on the other rocket. That's my rotating beacon. Every helicopter, every aircraft has one of those. And I had a light back on the tail, 5 lights. what I'm saying is, and I can tell from your all's reaction, you like what you see there. I did everything I could to make that as professional as I could. I couldn't make it 36 inches wide like a real Cobra, and I couldn't put skids on it because it had to have wheels. But that was pretty darn close to a Cobra helicopter. I was just asked, would it fly? Yes, it would. But only if I was going about 50 miles an hour down a hill and hit a big bump. Oh gosh, I gotta pay attention to what button I'm on. I don't know if y'all can see this, but oh gosh, I'm on the wrong one again. I'm sorry. I'll get it in a minute. Okay, here it is. Okay. I am so sorry. I don't know why that keeps doing that. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm just going to forget about the pointer, okay? But those blades up there are supported by 2 rods, and some of y'all in the front may be able to see those. If I didn't have those rods up there...
If you want advanced slide, just say slide.
Okay, now Troy's a good man. That's a good man. But anyway, if I did not have those rods up there, every time I hit a bump, those blades would do this. And pretty soon they'd be down around my ankles. But anyway, that was my pride and joy. And because of that helicopter is why I've had so much publicity in the villages. And I didn't ask for any of it. But I was also in the last article I was in, if you live in the villages and you get the newspaper, you should have seen me in the June magazine. It was a 6-page story on my career, my aviation career. So if you still have it and you're like me, usually just put it aside, look at your June Villages magazine and you'll see a lot more about me, okay? That's all I want to say about me, okay? Okay. Okay, there's the Cobra again. That's a better picture than you saw before. But you can see that cockpit was only 36 inches wide. The back seat is the pilot, the front seat is the gunner. If the gunner got killed, the pilot could fire the weapons and fly the helicopter. If the helicopter pilot got killed, the gunner could fly it and he could fire the weapons. It was a tremendous aircraft, and I flew it a lot on my second tour, and I love that thing. Okay, this is the first article I was in. And that's right outside of our village. We were in a villa, and that was outside of our villa. And you can see the blades are a little floppy there. I didn't have them up like I should have had at that point. But that was the first magazine. That was in 2019. Troy? This was my second time I was in the Villages magazine, and that's how I dressed when I was in parades or whatever. I went to a lot of different things. But anyway, as you can see, I've got a flight suit on, I've got my boots, I've got my helmet, I've got my shoulder helmet, or shoulder holster rather, yeah, right there. And of course, no respectable pilot would be without his sunglasses. There was no article written about this. This was just in the magazine in 2020 rather. Okay, Troy. Okay, this is the aircraft I flew in Vietnam, my first tour for 5 months. It's called an OH-23G. And as you can see, it's just a little bubble, 3 seats, that's all. And you can go about 90 miles an hour in that thing at full speed. But that thing we would do everything with that little helicopter that just about every helicopter in the military could do. We couldn't do it as big as they could, but we did. We would haul water in the night because a lot of times our troops wouldn't have any support out in the field, and they might need water or ammunition or whatever. And if I was the only thing available, we would tie a rope to the left skid, then run it through the water cans for ammunition cans, wrap it around the other tube, and the guy would sit there and hold that. And that's how we would get water or ammunition sometimes to the guys in the field that needed it, and nobody else could get it to them. I love that helicopter. That's the one that I got shot up in twice, as you'll see in just a minute. Okay, Troy. This was the section I was in. We were called the anteaters. And Troy, see that little right in the front of the bowl? Raise it up, right there you go. That says anteater. And Major Cockle, who was there, and he's the left guy over here, the left, Major Cockle, put that on there. We were called the anteaters. And where we parked our helicopters at night and where we flew out was called the Ant Hill. And that was with the 9th Infantry, as you can see. And I was there from December of 66 to May of 67. But I was only with these guys for 5 months. And you'll see why in just a minute. Okay, Troy. This was that section. And I drew that when I was over there. And that really portrays every person that you just saw in that previous drawing. I'm the guy that's leaning over, Troy, the second guy from that to the left. That's me. And that's saying pucker factor going up. Berea, Vung Tau, huh? Major Cockle is the guy over there taking pictures. And then the next guy down, yeah, that's Major Cockle. Then Captain Mao Chow is right there. And then Hans Hoffman is over on the bottom right. He was a German guy. His wife didn't even speak English. We were the 4 pilots in the 1st Brigade of the 9th Infantry. Okay? And the other guys, everything, one guy's wife was pregnant. They were, all those things represented what those guys did, but you can't see it, and I'm not going to talk about all the rest of them. Okay, Charlie.
What about him?
That was our sergeant. And he says, that's a typical day. But there you see the anteater, the way Major Cockle drew it, and that was on the front of our helicopters. Okay, this was Operation Port C. I can't stand in one place, but thank you, Troy. Okay, this was Operation Port C. Every big military operation in Vietnam had a name. And you can see 2 or 3 Hueys there that are taking off, and that's my little aircraft right in front of me. And they had dropped troops in this humongous LZ, about the size of 2 football fields. And this was the first day of the operation. And Troy, go ahead. After you saw that picture of me, I've been flying into that place several times that morning. And I flew into it all day long. But one time that I flew in and I was approaching brigade headquarters, which was at the far end of that field you saw, and I pulled the nose up like this to slow it down to land. And when I did, you see all those holes right there? That's from a machine gun or an automatic weapon. About 8 or 9 rounds. And when I pulled my nose up like this to land, that's when he hit me. And I thought and I saw this stuff go through my cockpit. And I said, darn, I didn't see that sapling. I thought I had hit a little tree there where I was landing, and I thought I'd hit a tree and it was going through my cockpit. But then I saw some bullet holes in the front of it. And I said, oh no, somebody's got me in their sights. So I landed, rolled my throttle off, and dove out of the aircraft because they had me in their sights. Okay, that's another bullet hole. That's in my fuel cell. So that could not be one guy, it had to be 2 guys. The first guy had an automatic weapon. That hole came from a guy with a single shot rifle. So there were 2 guys that were determined to put me down, but they didn't make it. And Major Cockle, bless his heart, he came over and looked at it, and he's dripping fuel there. He said, Bill, fly home to Bearcat. I said, well, sir, it's dripping fuel. He said, well, if you keep your nose low and your airspeed up, you won't lose much fuel. I felt like saying, you idiot, but I didn't, of course. He was a major, and I was a captain, and I had to do what he said. And I knew if I didn't fly back, somebody else did. So sure enough, I got back in it, kept my nose low, went as fast as I could, and made it back to Bearcat before I ran out of fuel. But that's the first time I got shot up. And you see that bullet on the right? That's the bullet that went in my fuel cell. And I didn't know that and I had a whole bunch of shrapnel in the back of my neck and my helmet. Not a lot of the coloring or surface of my helmet off, but it also got me in the neck. And some medics there realized what had happened, they came over to me and cleaned my neck up. Well, I didn't think anything much about it anymore until they had a meeting and gave me a Purple Heart. I didn't know they'd put me in for that. So I was very fortunate, to be honest. I was talking to somebody, and I'm a pretty religious guy, I believe in God a lot, I'll put it that way. And I told this person, I said, if that guy firing that automatic weapon had moved it 1 degree, I wouldn't be here today. He'd have cut my head off. And I believe that with all my heart. Okay, Troy. This is the second operation that we were in after that one, and it's called Hourglass. As you see, that's right down from the city of Saigon. And it's a perfect figure 8, and it's a river. And there was one road that went down that, and it made a bend right there where the two parts of it meet. And it went like this. The road went like that. Well, I got a call and was told to pick up the S2 and the S3. The S2 is the intelligence guy, the S3 is the operations guy. And they went out to check on a mine sweeping team that was sweeping that field and that road. You cannot use a road on a new operation until you sweep it. That way you don't hopefully hit mines or landmines or whatever that they want to blow up your vehicles or people. So we had a mine sweeping team coming down that road, and I was flying the S2 and the S3 out there just to check on them. Well, when we got there, and they were about 50 yards from where the two parts of the 8 meet, and they were marching along like this. One guy had a rifle up here, another had it down here. They were like they were on a Sunday picnic walk. Those two officers, especially the S3, the operations officer, I couldn't even repeat all the words he said when he saw that. They just blew up and cursing and saying things I can't repeat here because they were so upset because this is the first day of an operation. Every one of those security guys should have had their weapon like this, so that when one round is fired by the enemy, they're ready to fire right back. But those guys, like I say, they thought they were on a picnic. Well, the S3 told me to land as close to them as I could. So I came back around my little helicopter that you saw, and I started an approach towards them, going right over there where those two parts meet. Well, I didn't realize it, and we didn't see it. There was a big ambush there waiting for that minesweeping team. There was about 10 people on it. There were 2 or 3 people with the minesweepers, and then they had security guys with their weapons that were going to protect them. And if any enemy fire came up, they would use it, because the sweepers, they had a weapon with them, but they couldn't use them. So that's why the S3 and the S2 got so upset. So I started an approach to land about 50 yards on the other side of where those parts of the 8 meet. Well, guess what? I'm low and slow now. I'm probably 50, 60, 70 feet in the air. I don't know exactly. But that's not very far. Probably no more than from here to the back of the room. And I'm also getting slower now because I'm going to be making an approach. Well, guess what happened? Those guys in that ambush decided, hey, let's get that little helicopter. That's a lot better than those people. And I'm not exaggerating one bit. It sounded like 2 popcorn machines started going off underneath my aircraft. I don't know, I have no idea how many people were in that ambush. I don't know how many rounds they fired at me. I don't know how many they hit my helicopter with. But as soon as I heard that first round or a couple of rounds, I didn't even think about it. I just reacted. I went like this with what I call a cyclic stick. A helicopter has a cyclic, and it's right here. And if you want to go left, you go that way. If you want to go right, you go that way. If you want to go back, you go this way. If you want to go forward, you go that way. And you also have a throttle over here in this hand, and you got 2 feet on 2 pedals. So you don't have a lot to do right then, right? But as soon as I heard those first couple rounds, I did this as far as I could go with my cycling, because that ambush was only trained and set up to fire straight down that road. and I turned to the right to where they couldn't shoot at me anymore. When I turned right, it was on its side like this. And that's when me and my right passenger got hit by the same bullet. And next slide. That's me in the hospital. And I can't believe those nurses didn't even get all the blood off my leg. Look at that. But anyway, and my Marlboro cigarettes in my hand. I apologize for that. But anyway, I was there for 5 days, and I swear to gosh, I do not know how bad I was hurt. I really don't. All I know is there was a big bandage on my knee, and the next slide, Troy. That was my S2. He was hit in the left knee, I was hit in the right knee, because our knees were right together. He was hurt a lot worse than me. Evidently, the bullet hit him in the bone and started tumbling. And then it went through my knee, and it didn't hit any bones in my knee. I was lucky. I knew I was hit, but I didn't have time to worry about it. I had to get away and get close to some friendlies because I didn't know what was going to break, what was going to fall off my aircraft, or whatever. I could have been hit 50 times. I had no idea. I could have been leaking fuel out of 4 or 5 holes in the fuel tank. I don't know that either. All I know is that the helicopter held together till I flew over and landed next to some friendlies that could provide protection for us. And I never saw that aircraft again. But anyway, I felt sorry for that fellow because he's the one that really got hit hard. All right, Troy. This is not the helicopter I was flying because we didn't have any of the writing on the tail boom like you see there. But that's what they did. They came out with a Chinook and got the helicopter that afternoon and took it back to Bearcat. And we called for a dust-off, which is an ambulance, helicopter ambulance is what it amounts to. And took us to the 24th VAC hospital that you saw the S2 and me in. But that's what happened. They took that aircraft back. Well, the 9th Infantry Division had a policy that if you had 2 Purple Hearts, they put you in a safe job. Well, guess what they put me in? Maintenance officer of the gun company. Well, the gun company is the one where I had 6 helicopters that were outfitted with guns. They weren't the Cobra, they were the old Mike model Huey. But they had rocket pods, machine guns, and different things on them. That was my new job once I got out of the hospital. And I got fired at there probably more than I did in the brigade. We got any hunters in here? Anybody that hunts? God, I only saw 2 hands. But anyway, to show you what would happen, and I say I got shot at more as the maintenance officer of that gun company than I did in the brigades. If one of our aircraft went down out in the field somewhere, then I would rush out. We always had 2 standby helicopters that were all fueled up, had all their ammunition, everything they needed, and I'd grab a crew chief and a gunner, and we would go out to wherever the aircraft was that was in trouble or down on the ground or whatever. This is a good example of what could have happened to me when I was in that job. One day I got a call. We had an aircraft down. He had a little indicator on his dashboard that said tail rotor. And what that was is you got a gearbox back there on that little rotor on the tail. And if that thing starts giving way or getting fuzz on it, it'll give you an indication in the cockpit that says tail rotor. And it could be bad. If you lose that tail rotor, that's the worst situation you can be in a helicopter. So that had happened to one of our gunships out in the field. So I took a mechanic with me and I got up on that little, well, you don't see it on that one, there's a little black thing that goes like this off the back of the tail, and that keeps you from hitting your tail rotor if you flare. Well, I climbed up on that and was taking the bolts off of the tail rotor gearbox to look at that magnet and see what the situation was, if it was bad or good. Well, while I'm doing that, I hear this. You know what that was? That was a bullet real close to my head. You don't hear that unless it's real close, but it sounds kind of like, well, of course, I jumped down immediately. And this is in the dark, but I got a flashlight up there so I can see what I'm doing. So I was a perfect target. But evidently, whoever fired that one shot after about 10 or 15 minutes said, well, I think we killed that guy. Because, I mean, I jumped down immediately, of course. And I got back up there and to make sure everything was okay and I didn't get any more fire. But that's a good example of what I say. I probably got fired at more with a gun company than I did the brigade. Make a long story short, I got the fuzz off of it, wasn't very much metal at all, put it back together and said, okay guys, take off, you're good. And I flew back to Bearcat. Okay, you see that article. It says the old Reliable. That was the 9th Infantry Division. That was March the 4th of 1967. It says Aaron Chopper cops another coveted award. I'll show you that award in a minute, but you saw where the 2 times I got shot at or shot up. You say, boy, weren't you scared? No, you don't have time to be scared. First off, you don't know what's going to happen until it does happen. And then as soon as it happens, you're too busy trying to get out of the situation that you don't worry about. Well, I knew I was hitting the knee, but I didn't worry about that much because I had to get out of there. I didn't know what was going to happen to my aircraft, what parts were going to fall off of it, if the engine was going to quit, I didn't know. But anyway, those 2 times I got wounded were not as bad as what this was. Let me explain why I say that. It was a night mission, and I got 2 passengers with me. And I'm going from Dongtown down in the Delta back to Bearcat, which was north of Saigon. It's in the dark. And my ADF needle, which is one of my radios, when I'm talking to the tower, is supposed to point at where they are. That needle, I didn't realize, was not properly operating. And I was about 5 or 10 miles to the east of Bearcat. And at night, you can't see what you're looking at. It's just dark. So to make a long story short, I get to where I know I should have been at Bearcat already. I had a lieutenant who I picked up down at Dongtown. He had a guitar and he had his duffel bag and his rifle. I had a walking wounded who had his duffel bag and a rifle. So my little helicopter was way heavier than normal. What does that mean? That means I'm using more fuel than normal. Well, I go by time and distance. Where you go, after 10 minutes I should have gone 10 miles or whatever. And my fuel needle is going to 0. And we're in the dark. I can't see anything. All I saw it. Y'all have heard of the Jolly Green, where they would shoot about 5 machine guns out the walls of the aircraft? It looked like fire. Oh, I saw one of those. And I called the 9th Infantry Division on my radio. I said, I see a Jolly Green. Do you know where it is? See if you can find out where it is. They couldn't find out. I had them send up flares. Couldn't see the flares. So finally I told the lieutenant and the walking wounded guy, I said, look guys, we're going to be on the ground in just a few minutes, either because we crash landed or because I landed. Either way, it's not going to be good because we don't know where we are. It's night. Charlie may be down there somewhere. Now, this is the miracle and why I'm saying so much about this. You'll see in a minute about my prayer. But anyway, I didn't pray at that moment because I'd already prayed up that morning. But I told the 2 guys, one on my right and one on my left, I said, we're going to be on the ground in a matter of minutes if we don't find some place to land. Look for lights, any kind of lights, because all it was dark jungle for about 10 square miles. And all of a sudden, right between my feet almost, I see a truck going through the jungle. You couldn't see the truck, all you saw was the lights flickering between the trees, I said, well, I know Charlie probably isn't out here in the truck. We're going to follow that truck wherever it goes. It went for a little distance and then turned onto a little dirt road. I turned following him down that dirt road and we go over a little Vietnamese village. Just a small village, not much of anything. But on the other side of that village was a motor pool, and that's where that truck went into. Well, I made an approach into that motor pool. It was white sand. And the first time I made my approach, everything went white. I couldn't see anything. So I pulled up on my collective and pulled back up out of the sand. and came back, and this time I go like this. I go like this. Bam! Didn't have time for all that sand to get up there. Well, this lieutenant colonel comes out to the aircraft, only American in that compound. He looked at me and he said, "Captain, my men almost shot you down." I said, "Colonel, don't your men know Charlie doesn't have helicopters?" And that's the God truth. That's what I told him. I could have said a lot more to him, but I didn't. I just said, "Colonel, don't you know Charlie doesn't have helicopters?" Well, to make a long story short, found out where I was. I couldn't go very far with the fuel I had left. I was surprised I even made it there. But I found out that about 3 or 4 miles away from where we were, I could get some aviation fuel the next morning. So he gave us places to sleep, gave us a beer, and we spent the night there. I called the 9th Infantry and told them what was going on. "I'll see you guys tomorrow." And sure enough, the next morning I flew as fast as I could, filled up with fuel, came back, got the lieutenant, got the walking wounded, and flew back to Bearcat. Now, I told you I'm a pretty religious guy. That one thing taught me more about God's covenants than anything I've had in my life. There was no way I should have seen, why was I at the exact same place, a truck in 10 square miles at night was at the same place? Why was I not 5 miles this way or 5 miles that way? If I had not seen that truck, there's no question in my mind there would be 3 either hurt or killed people from my helicopter. I call that a miracle. I don't know what you call it. All 3 of the times that my 2 times I got wounded, and that time was a miracle. The first 2 times, there's no reason I should have been able to fly away from those 2 situations. I should have been killed in both of them. I definitely should have been killed when this article was written about my helicopter that night. Okay, next slide, Troy. Okay, that's me. I look a little better there than I do now, but anyway. But there's the gold fender. That is what Major Cockrell painted on my helicopter that night. He painted ribbons on the tail booms of our helicopter. If you got an air medal, he put an air medal on your tail boom. If you got another medal, he put that on. Well, that was my reward for almost getting killed that night. And that article you saw, there was almost nothing in that article that was the truth. I think Major Cockrell wrote the article. He had to, but he wouldn't admit it. But that article was so full of errors, it wasn't even worth the piece of paper it was written on. Okay, Troy. Okay, you saw the first picture I said was the first picture of when I was in the magazine in 2019. That was the picture. This is the write-up from that picture on the right side, and this is what it says. "Lord, help me do what I've been trained to do, and if it gets beyond my capability, it's in your hands." Retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Bill Shawn started every day in Vietnam with this simple prayer. And I tell you what, nobody will ever convince me that prayer didn't save my life. 3 times that I know of. He honored my prayer that said, if it gets beyond my capabilities, it's in your hands, Lord. There's no reason I should be standing here talking to you guys. But I give the Lord credit for every time that I could have lost my life in Vietnam. And that prayer, I didn't pray all day long. I didn't have time because I was too busy. I prayed that in the morning, and that carried me over till the next morning. Okay, Troy.
All right.
I tell you, there's one thing I wanted to say, Troy, and then I'll be through. I don't look at myself as a hero. I'm not. I'm just a helicopter pilot that did his job. The heroes are those guys that didn't make it back. I've got some dear friends here in the villages that were what we call the grunts, the infantrymen that were down on the ground day in and day out. And one of my guys that I know, friends, got so wounded he went to Japan, and when he got healed up enough, he came back to Vietnam, back to his unit. That's a hero. I'm not a hero. I just did my job. The Lord is my hero. And that's all I got to say.